Right. Well, great to see so many people. And thanks to Molly for organizing and putting the panel together. So it's definitely kind of, exciting and also, stressful when you're on the other side, right? Kind of applying for jobs. So what we're going to try to do is give you, our perspective on, how to navigate the job market with, I guess, an emphasis on faculty jobs, which is where we have most experience. The first thing I always say is that, we are one data point each, even though, we might have a lot of years of experience and things like that. So, take that with, those are, data points, not necessarily the blueprint to everything. So I kind of a little bit of a word of caution. But the first thing is, you need to apply, right, to get a job in a way. And when you put your applications together, the first thing I guess we all want to see is, you're telling a story. So we want to see your story, your academic story in a way. And it's more than just bullet point, I've done X, Y, and Z, but it's, what are you excited about? What are the big questions you're trying to solve? How you're trying to solve it? And this is very much kind of the approach that I guess will be reflected when you give a talk, when you write your statement. It's really kind of telling your story, why you're doing what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why it's so exciting and so important, and why you're the good candidate in a way. So, it all comes by putting documents together. And, the first thing you have to do is, of course, making sure that, you fit the department, the requirements that you have, and so on and so forth. So, that would be kind of the basic advice, right? So you look for a job, try to see how you fit best, the requirements, again, and requirements in quotes. It's still like your scientific story, in a way you're trying to tell. Um, Panels review or committees review a lot of applications, right? And so always kind of keep that in mind. You're putting in a lot of time and effort in it, but there are a lot of things that have to be read. So, make sure you're succinct. And again, you're telling your story as quickly as possible. So usually what we like to see in the first kind of paragraph of a research statement is, again, kind of the story, who you are, what you're trying to solve, how you're trying to solve it, and telling us why you're so excited about this. So that's something that kind of, we kind of enjoy, seeing right at the start. And then going into, what you've done in the past, what is your big vision for the next, 5 years or so? People, are looking for what are the big problem you're going to solve, how you're going to, advise PhD students, postdoc, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of, one of the big piece of the research statement, I would say. I think my colleagues will talk more about, how to write this together. There are a lot of documents to prepare. Don't underestimate how long it takes. So I can see everybody nodding. It takes a lot of time to prepare. And again, it takes a lot of effort, but they're important. Again, each piece of your application gives some information to the panel. So you also don't need to repeat yourself many times. Use each document wisely in a way, right? So your cover letter is a little bit of a way to introduce yourself and, telling the committee, why this application, why this place, how you're going to collaborate with people, how do you see yourself in the department, in the university, and actually in the community as a whole. Then your CV is a little bit more bullet point, here's my PhD, here's what I've done, here's my publication. Your research statement, what you've done in the past, your vision, how you're going to change the world in a way. And so really each document gives a little bit of something. And so that's important to use the documents again in a way that is useful. As I mentioned, the opening of your statement is important. The closing is as important. When we start reading application, we want to be excited about a candidate. So understanding what they want to solve, how. Then we go through the details. So people are telling us their story. I've done X, I've done Y. This is why it matters. And then at the end, we want to invite them for interview. So the closing has to be, something exciting, the vision, the future. In the little warning, I'll always say, be careful with the kitchen sink approach, where you list everything you've done without tying the story together. And so, again, we all have this kind of attitude that we're excited about what we do, right? So we want to tell people about it, but there's always this kind of balance, making sure that, you balance the detail with the vision. So that would be my little kind of 2 cents. Since I'm first and I know a lot of things will come up, I'll stop here, just again, because I think a lot of the things will come through. And then I can come back a little bit more. We'll take questions now or.
Yeah, I think let's open up for questions.
Okay.
So it's not too.
Exactly. I'd like to not talk for 10 minutes. Yeah. So happy to take questions on kind of the first part on, how you put your applications and things like this, if there are any. Yeah.
How long does it take to prepare everything?
Oh boy. It's, I think the first one, it will take many weeks. I have to be honest. I think, the CV is usually something that you have already. And so it's just polishing it. The research statement takes several iterations. And I think my suggestion as well is, the earlier you start, the better. The advice I give my, students and postdoc when they go for the faculty job is, try to write the first paragraph, if you were telling your story, this is what I work on, this is how I do it, and this is what I'm going to solve in the next 5 years, and spend a fair bit of time on that. And write, I usually say, write 3 bullet points of the big questions that you're trying to solve. Just bullet points. And then start, kind of filling in the blanks. Get feedback. Get your mentors, friends, all of it to actually go through. And it, iterating helps a lot. It gets easier the more you do it, but definitely get feedback. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
Maybe on that,
Sara has one.
maybe take the mic.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just wouldn't say something.
Yeah, just maybe on that, it takes time for the initial stage. I very much agree with what Laure said. I think it's a very good strategy to think about the storyline, what you want to present, how you want to present yourself for that particular place. And you could just like submit a ton of the same research statements. That's the wrong thing to do, right? I mean, there needs to be something that's a bit tailored to the particular place you're looking at, what's specific about that department, what's specific about that job. So it does take even more time, right? Because for each of them, you need to tailor that. Maybe some of the structure or some things can remain the same, but you would hope that people would fine tune that to really fit to that department.
Yeah, definitely very important to make sure that the application doesn't read as the one I submitted everywhere. And I would love to work with all faculty members. So, make sure you tailor it. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you had a sense of like how much time you should spend talking about what you have done versus what you want to do in the future.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So, how much the past versus how much the future. So obviously it depends on career stage. Right. So if it's your first, faculty job application, couple of years out of your postdoc. So you want to build up, to your future. So it's, it's going to be more about the past in a way, which kind of makes sense, right? What you've done in your PhD and your postdoc. But what's very important to kind of emphasize in a way is also, what you've done that is a little bit different than your PhD advisors and your mentor, without saying it explicitly. But the more you can show that, this is yours and this is, your growth through the science and through the vision, that's quite important, right? And so again, it's always hard to tell the balance, but usually we expect someone to work on something over the next 5-10 years based on what they've done in the past. And it's not necessarily the topic, but it's more on, how they push things forward. And so, in general, the statements are about, I would say, 2/3 past, 1/3 future, again, roughly spread in a different fashion in a way. But, what you're going to do in the next 5 years, you can use what you've done in the past and show how you demonstrated that you can push those things much further on your own with your own team in a way. Any other questions? Will Gregory. Hey, Will.
Hello, thanks for that intro. I was just curious about whether you might have any perspective on kind of putting your proposal together or your cover letter and talking about how you'll collaborate with people in the department there. Specifically, do you have a sense of, like, obviously you can refer to people who will help you facilitate your own research goals, but is there a preference to showing like I don't know, I work on sea ice, I can work with this other person who does atmospheric aerosols because they're interested in machine learning or something like that, you know, or is it better to kind of focus on how you'll collaborate in terms of that facilitating your own research?
I think a little bit of both, right? So you want to show that you're going to be excited to be in a department. And that means you can talk to people who work on similar topic as yours, or things that you want to push forward. And that place is the place to do it because, you know, those people are interested in things you haven't done yet, for example. So it's very much about both what you're doing now, but also the growth overall. And again, when you go to a place, you're not working by yourself. The environment, the talks, right? I mean, for those of us here in LEAP and, you know, you at M Squared Line, there is a big community and all the people you interact with, you never even thought about. So, you know, showing that you have this kind of willingness in a way and being open-minded, I think that's kind of almost the, you know, one of the most important thing. So all of it works.
Well, thanks.
Hold on, Marco, want to follow up?
And maybe just an additional comment on this, an advice I received in the past is not to mention specific people in your application, but rather talk in terms of research areas, because those you don't mention maybe might take it personal. So that's the nitpick.
That's a good point. Anyone else? All right.
Okay, I think I'm going to continue on what Laure mentioned already related to writing research proposal. So it took me maybe like 2-3 months to have something that I feel a little bit satisfied with. And I could say that I wrote more than 10 times. And for each job that I applied, I wrote a new version of it. And sometimes it was also a practice to say, okay, forget about what I have and I write it from scratch again to see like if I can make something better or like if I can phrase the research that I'm doing differently. And I read a lot of stuff. So I try to like summarize what I have read and what was like the major suggestions. So you have to have a first paragraph that you say what you're doing or like what is your research goal in general? What is the big questions that you're trying to address? And then you continue around that. You start with your what you have done already, what you are doing, and what you're planning to do. And so one thing that I read that was interesting is that it shouldn't seem like you've been assigned different projects and you were good in finalizing them and getting some results, but it should show some story, like you were interested or you decided to go to this department and do that specific project, or you had some contribution in redefining your research topic as well. So that should all come in like the way that you phrase your statement, your written proposal. And so when you write about the future research, you have to have short-term plans and long-term plans. Short-term plans are usually considered as, let's say you write you apply for a grant, and then those short-term plans tells the title of the grants that you're going to write. So that's going to be something for 2 years ahead, 3 years ahead to 5 years ahead. And then you have to have like long-term plans as well. Let's say in 10 years, what you want to be doing, or like what big question you have already answered. And then beyond that, you have to also say where you want to be as a researcher in long term. But that's kind of like, that was probably the hardest part for me to like imagine, okay, where my research might go. But then a simpler way to think about it is that, okay, you're working on a subject and there's this big problem that exists in the field. Well, one way to phrase it is that, okay, I want my research to address that issue. Let's say if you're working on microphysics, for example, you want your research to address the problem of modeling microphysics. Or I don't know, you could also say you want to be the best researcher. And then you can also go like, be more creative in terms of methodology. I remember I talked to Pierre and he was like, yeah, so you know that now people are using machine learning. Could you like imagine in 5 years what would be the new tool that someone might want to use in order to address some of the problems? I thought that was very helpful. So that in terms of like what to write, and then you also have to read really carefully through the job announcement, what they want, what kind of job they're doing there, and what are the gaps that they actually have. Like job announcements are typically very general. So they say we're looking for some climate scientists, some atmospheric scientists. If they want to be really detailed, then they sort of like separate between atmosphere and ocean. But typically it's only someone from a relevant background that wants to work on a collaborative environment, something related to the climate. So that's typically the no, my note is gone. Yeah, so it would be then difficult to kind of tailor your proposal to something that is more relevant to that specific department. So one way that you can go around this problem is to reach out to someone that you may know in the department, or if you don't know, just to the search committee, get a little bit of more information, like what they're actually looking for. Do they have like more specific requirement? And if that is something that is aligned for with your research, you can maybe tailor a little bit to that specific requirement. Read samples. I think I read many samples. The problem is that samples that are relevant to my field doesn't exist. So like it's like atmospheric scientists, ocean scientists, they don't share their samples that much. But I read more than 20 computer scientist samples, which I had no idea what they're doing. But then it was interesting because you also get the idea that, okay, some of the audience that are reading my research proposal, they don't know exactly what I'm doing. So I have to be able to communicate with them, give them a big picture, but also some of the details of things that are important and I have done. I think you have to like clearly say, if you address some big problem, you have to clearly say that, okay, that was a challenge and my research addressed that using this this method. And if there is a shortcoming and you plan to like go ahead and address that shortcoming, you have to also say that's, I think that's kind of like make it stronger to not just say what have worked, but also what hasn't worked, and you plan to work on that. Get feedback from people that you know. Share your statement with your PIs, your colleagues, and ask for very critical feedbacks on like if it's an appealing one. If me as an, let's say, search committee member read the first paragraph, would I want to read the rest of it, or would I say, okay, this looks like other ones, so I'm not that much interested in reading the rest of it. So I read that like research committee members are kind of busy. They have more than 200 applications and they look for any excuse not to read your application. I haven't been in search committee, but that's a joke. But this means like, yeah, you have to stand out among 200 applications. No offense, sorry. Yeah, I think that's all I have here. If someone wants to add anything.
Yeah, maybe just on the last comment, I would frame it the other way around. Like, it's, I mean, you see so many CVs or like statements that are just messy, right? So it's, I mean, just give people an easy time, right? I mean, it has to be very polished. It has to be very, like, it has to look clean and nice, right? I mean, you just want to be willing to get into it, and you can have figures and all that, you know, like CVs has to be like easy to read, no, like all over the place. And you can't imagine that. I would say like 80% of like statements and CVs are still very difficult to read. You know, it blows my mind. Like just this polishing piece, you're already part of a small fraction, you know, and then you're in good hands, right? So that extra mile is actually very important. So you don't get in that section, unfortunately.
I have a question here. So if you don't mind, so actually Thanks. So actually, I wondered, like this research proposal, how important it would be, because if you are working in one field and then there is a faculty position and you look at the CV of everyone, more or less you will come up with the same questions, I imagine, and the same methodology. So does this will take you to the short list and that's it? Or does it is something that also will take you further? And if it takes you also further, then what makes that a specific person to stand out from the rest? Is that clear?
I don't know.
I can also add something.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think all documents do matter, actually. I think the research statement is definitely it's a big one. because your CV is, something you can Google. And as you said, a lot of people have similar CVs. Everybody has a PhD and, has done interesting stuff, and people have published in general. But the research statement is again, is your story. And your story is what matters, because we're not hiring someone just based on a few publications, but we're really hiring people who want to solve big problems with certain methodologies, and we're going to push the field further. So I do think, yeah, the research statement is clearly very important. And, again, like Pierre said, I think we do have hundreds of applications, and we actually do read it all, by the way. But it's true that it does make a difference, right? When I understand what are the big questions, and even if it's someone who is not in my field, then they convince me that this is what to do and how to do it. Because you convince people who are not in your field as well. And so that's important. What gets you the job, if only I knew. I think there are amazing people who apply and don't get jobs, right? So I think, we have to be honest about this. I think people who have jobs deserve it, but there are tons of deserving people who have to apply many times. And unfortunately, it depends on the fit of the department, as Sara mentioned, the gaps or what people are looking for, or the tradition, or a new area that the department want to go in. And that's, you could say it's a little bit random, but that's also why it's important to read, the requirement, and to talk to people in the department that you go in, because there it becomes super specific on the needs in a way. And so, yeah, I'm afraid that's harder to find a proper answer to it, but hopefully that.
Add to that, yeah. I think there's also one point, which is the ad that you see out, is really the emerged part of the iceberg, right? There's a lot of story and what is actually the focus area that you have no idea about, right? And I feel that sometimes, especially talking to like female scientists, please apply, because there's, lots of studies showing that there's some self-screening, and typically female scientists would not want to apply because they feel they do not fit. And if you see that it's, was talking to a friend and she got the job and she felt that she was like fitting on only 60% of the job ad, So you have to realize that this ad is just a fraction of the whole thing. There's going to be a lot of internal discussion and politics, that goes with that. So please apply, even if you don't feel it's a full fit, and talk to people. Like, if maybe that's a good thing to do earlier, right? To talk to if you know people especially in the department, or get in touch with them to see if that would be a good match, But I think you should not underestimate like all of the background that there is, in behind, so.
And going back to your original question, I think, this is you're playing at the edge, because if you arrive second, then it's like as if you were a number at 100. So every single piece you're submitting, that matters, because once you get towards, the last three people that were shortlisted, then every single piece of material is scrutinized line by line. Maybe there are some priorities, some initial screening strategies, that maybe they look first at the CV and then at the proposal. But once you get to the final three, everything is really analyzed into the detail. And I totally agree with also what Pierre mentioned, that oftentimes, the call is general, but look at the department, what they're doing, get in contact with someone to get a better understanding of what they might be looking for. Yeah, oftentimes there's a lot more that you don't know, and that makes you potentially a very good candidate for that position.
And also, that's a much better way to actually frame your talk, right? Because if you know the audience, like know your audience, that's the number one piece of advice, right? If you don't know the audience, you'll be off, right? But if you know, that's going to be much more targeted, so much better, right? More questions?
Okay, if not, I can probably take it from here.
I have another question, but I didn't want to monopolize the discussion. So I just another. Yeah. Like another thing that I've heard, like from another random data that you say. Yeah, so is that sometimes it's more easily justified if you have like background study in a certain field, and then you are applying to a department or advertisement that potentially is like you describe 50% fit to what you have. And then it's more easy, it's easier to convince people that you will be having added value. But is it something you have seen that the department you end up getting hired and a start of your position is different from what you've done before or not?
I can answer some of that. So what I've seen is people flipping the initial perspective, right? So sometimes you take people, you will have 5 or 6 interviews, candidates that come for an interview, and in your mind you have the ranking like 1, 2, 4 based on CVs, and then the 5th might be there, or whatever. And then you see the talk, right? And that person is really flipping your mindset, right? And saying, okay, that's transformative, right? That seems to be very novel, and that happens, right? So your case where that person's might be bringing something new, new perspective, completely innovative type of work, and you were not appreciative of that, right? And again, when you define the search, right, you have a very narrow view of the world, right? You might not know everything that's going on, and like some of the, especially because that might not be exactly your area, right? It's connected to your area, but you might not be knowing exactly the new things in that particular field. So yeah, so that I've seen that a couple of times, and that's exciting, I would say. And you see that, at the end of the talks, people really typically agree, yeah, that's very innovative, that's where we should go in.
And sometimes some universities are really ready to take big bets. I've seen electrical engineers being hired in a department for a fluid dynamics position because this person was the best in control, for example. And so, yeah, you have these situations happening very often.
Yeah, I think all of us have seen some of that. We've all have been also in departments that, are not necessarily the one where we were trained in. So I think, yeah, some departments are more open to new areas and new research. So I think it can definitely be a plus. Pierre mentioned the talk, so you can definitely convince people in a talk, but I don't think we've talked about the one-on-one chats. Those are also really important because, the talk will be tailored to an audience, but when you talk one-on-one to people, and again, they can have many different backgrounds, and you have a very different type of conversation. And so seeing, how open-minded you are, how creative, and so on and so forth, all of that is a pretty good way to convince members as well of your creativity.
I could jump back on that. I remember that time when I was applying for jobs, like going across, a colleague told me, we're hiring a colleague, but I'm hiring my neighbor, right? No, but I thought it made a whole lot of sense, right? That's a very important comment, right? There's the science piece, right? But you also want someone collegial, right? That's going to be a good citizen in the department, because running a department is not just about giving talks and writing papers, right? You need to actually handle classes. There might be some community or service, that you need to. So you want to make sure that the person will contribute as well, right? So those pieces are also important, I feel.
A bit on the teaching and stuff. How there are teaching statements, right, that have to be submitted. How important are those statements in comparison to, say, the research proposal, CV, etc.?
So I think it'll depend on the type of job you apply for, right? So if it's a, regular faculty position, I mean, again, it's always hard to tell, which one is more important, but you are mostly focusing on research. But the teaching statement is also an important part of it. As Pierre mentioned, we technically our salaries are, for teaching in a way. So, if you are in a place where you do have a lot of undergraduate students, so they want to see that you can teach, a large cohort, say, in whatever discipline you end up in. Understanding how you will interact with the student, graduate and undergraduate, it's also very important, because all of us, right, we're scientists and we need to communicate our science. And so, communication through teaching is really critical. This is, it's going to be the next generation of scientists, wherever they end up. So definitely, put also, time in your teaching statement is definitely big part of it. If you apply for more liberal art colleges, then there the weight is even higher for teaching. It's very, very important, because a lot of that is a lot of emphasis is placed on it. Yeah, it's a great question.
And if have any of you seen where someone who may not have formal teaching experience, like how would you write a teaching statement that is exemplifying the skills that you might have to be a good teacher, even if you've not actually taught a class? And how does one approach that if you're mostly researching?
So I would say for that, yeah, that's a very tricky thing, I would say it also depends on the career stage, right? So when you're applying to, say, an assistant professor position, that's almost to be expected, right? But that's a place, I think, where you could actually make that play in your favor, right? Try to get some experience, there might be opportunities from time to time to teach 1 or 2 classes, right? To get some experience. There might be a summer school or some event where you could be having some, of that experience. You could showcase also, because teaching typically also includes mentorship as well. So showcasing some mentorship opportunities. We are trying to have some of that as part of LEAP. So as much as you can, showing a little bit of that early leadership would be actually very important, and try to look around, there are always opportunities, or for instance, research experience for undergrads REUs, so that's another experience where you could have, it's quasi teaching, but that would show some mentorship,
Yeah, so the teaching statement, again, it should be seen very broadly as mentoring, teaching, outreach. So even if you give, public outreach talk, if you mentor, high school students, all of this is actually part of your engagement with, if you want, people who are not in your field in a way, and educating the community. So that's more this kind of mindset rather than the proper teaching in the way that you just go into the classroom. So think about it very broadly, as broadly as possible. Yeah, I think we're gonna do talks now.
Okay, so I can take it up from here. All right, so now you prepare all your material, the cover letter, the proposal, teaching statement, and you got an interview, you made it through the Zoom screening, and you were invited to give a talk. Now that talk is a very, very, very important part of getting the job, especially here in the US. I like to think that, once the candidates are invited for the talk, all the rest of the material doesn't matter almost compared to that performance, because it's a full day where you give a presentation, you interact with colleagues, and they'll probe your knowledge, they'll ask you questions, you'll get to interact, they'll get to really know both what you've done in terms of research, but also how you are as a person, how you could be as a colleague and as a teacher. So that part is really, really important, and the talk especially. And some of us are just better at presenting than others, but I think that, with sufficient practice and having some guidelines, that can be, the bar can be brought pretty high for the talk. And so today I'm just going to give you some guidelines based on my experience, and yeah, then we'll open it to Q&A. So in terms of structure, you want to start by giving a background about yourself, who you are, what your background is, your research team. This will help kind of set the stage. Then you want to invest some slides in really motivating your research. Like, what is your research area? What are the current knowledge gaps? This will help the audience understand that you actually know what you're talking about and how it fits within the bigger scheme of things. And here is also where, if you have numbers, dollar numbers, for example, it's where you want to put them. Say you're working on tropical cyclones, it's always good to put a USD amount on the cost of inaction, for example, of not doing your research, because your audience can be very diverse, and some may not be specifically expert in your field. So I think numbers are always good, or any other factual, implication of not doing that research. After you've done this and you have your stage ready, then you want to provide an overview on your past research. This is really the meat of the talk. You want to describe methodologies you've used or introduced, the key findings, explain very clearly what is novel, and how this addresses the knowledge gap you had identified. It's always good to have an organic presentation. So always refer back when you have a finding to the knowledge gaps you had identified. After this is done, now you want to talk about your current and future research, and we've talked a bit about this. So this is where you discuss your ongoing projects, but also where you project where your research is going. And that is very, very important. And one piece of advice I got in the past was, okay, propose a number of directions, but some will build from your expertise so that you show that there is a low risk on this one and productivity potentially is going to be high. But then also venture into some more ambitious avenue of research. And that is where you want to basically show that you're not just a satellite group of your former advisors group, but you're an independent researcher. You can do your own, you can drive your own research program. Here is also very good to be ambitious because the department sees you as their next superstar. So you really want to behave like one. You don't want to be, shy or, oh, maybe this will not work. Just dare a bit more than you would on a normal, conference presentation, and get them excited about the research. You might also want to mention then have maybe one slide or two on potential funding for your research. If you're an independent PI, you'll need to bring in funds to support your students and postdocs, and so that they can do their research. And showing that you have, especially at the early stage, I think most of us don't have a lot of experience with this, but it's good to show that you have at least an idea where to go fish. You might want to include some slides on potential collaborations, but like I said before, I wouldn't make any specific name, just because sometimes you don't even know of collaborators that are within the potential collaborators that are within the department. Maybe just talk in terms of research areas and show how your research can really benefit from the ecosystem of the university, of the institution, but also is bringing new capabilities, new talent. Some slides on teaching philosophy also should go in the presentation. So the presentation essentially will run through all the things you've written in your proposal, teaching statement, cover letter, etc. It just gives you more time to explain with nice infographics, and text. This, I would say, covers, I would say, all the elements of a good presentation, and then you'll have to modulate things based on your specific research. Now, in terms of general advices for the talk, first is, as Pierre said before, know your audience. It's good if you make your talk resonate with the research or some of the teams that the institution is interested in. That will give you point. Read the job description, sometimes through the lines, and then make sure that your presentation somehow addresses those points that were brought up in terms of focus areas. Make the talk accessible. Maybe only one or two people in your audience really know the specifics of your research field. And to maximize your chances, you really need to keep the jargon low, except perhaps when in a couple of slides where you want to really target those two people that know very well, your research area. And then if you lose the audience every now and then, it's probably fine, but that shouldn't be throughout the talk. Otherwise, the impact that those two people that know your research area will have on convincing the other might be ultimately small if everyone else didn't understand anything. Be confident, be enthusiastic. One advice I received in the past also was, when you go for an interview, behave like a faculty. Don't behave like a PhD or a postdoc. You're already past that stage. They want to see that you are the perfect colleague for their department. And so, be confident and show enthusiasm. Also, one advice I give to my students, typically when in this case, is be open-minded. Right now, you have an idea of what your future research plan is, but once you join the department, you're going to interact with new people. You're going to be exposed to new ideas and inputs, and so your research might change. So mention that. I would say it's a very good thing to do. And then practice. Get For my presentation here at Columbia, I think I had 4 rehearsals with my advisor, 2 rehearsals with colleagues at the University of British Columbia, and then I practiced many times on my own. And this is something that I think it's important, and different people have different strategies, but I think practice really helps. Yeah, so I'll be happy to take any question.
In the back, maybe we can keep this ahead.
Okay, I have 2 questions. I guess maybe the first, what is like the general advice about how a job talk should be different from just if you got invited to give the department seminar? Kind of how to distinguish those. And then the second question is all of the things that you described that you should include. It sounds like the talk is going to be like 3 hours long. So how do you keep it in like 40 minutes?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, I think you should touch on all these points, and if you put a couple of slides, I think the core of the presentation is your research, past and future. I think that is the main part on which you'll be evaluated. But going to your first question, when you give a talk for a job, you're not just showcasing a specific research project that you worked on or 2. You are selling yourself and the research, and you want to make the audience aware of the what you bring to the table and how you're going to be as a colleague. So that's why it has to be structured slightly different than a classical seminar presentation. When you present your research, you potentially identify a number of key areas. You don't want to adopt the kitchen sink approach where you have a project per slide. Focus on some key projects maybe, and highlight your contributions. And yeah, keep it succinct, but highlight why it's novel. Maybe avoid technicalities. You need to go too technical, because most likely 80% of the audience will not be able to absorb that technical part. Instead, highlight what is novel, why it is impactful. That way, avoiding the technicalities, I think you can go through the research the overview much faster than. Yeah, I hope this answers both.
And maybe to add to that, it's because we have some searches going on these days. I see that just too frequently, that this kitchen sinks approach, where, I think the whole point is like, what's the story, right? And again, the audience is going to be very broad because it's a department. So avoiding technicality, that's spot on, right? I mean, there are times you can have a few slides, some people say you can lose your audience, or most of the audience, except for a few folks, for like 2 to 3 slides, right? But the rest, you should have a compelling story. People should really envision like how that's going to fit within the department. And it takes time to build that story, as opposed to just having, again, like a series of slides. It just doesn't fit very well, and the audience is lost very, very quickly. Yeah. So I think that's super important. And just, sorry, very quickly on that story. So that's my strategy. People might have different strategies, but I take weeks sometimes to think about the story. And I just write, that's going to be the frame, and then I say, okay, this I move and here. And then I start populating that, basically the bullet points that Laure was talking about. And then at the end, I feel I have the full story, and then I populate that with different things. And at the end, I remove some slides, because I always know that I will have too much. So I remove 10 to 20%, because I don't want to do it, but I do it. And I feel really good after the talk that I did it.
Yeah, so I think we always come back to no kitchen sink approach, not for the research proposal, not for the talk. And I think this is usually kind of really, that could be we don't know what will guarantee a job, but we know what can kill applications very quickly. And the same for the job talk. Your story is important. No need for all details. And, as Pierre mentioned, removing slide, do not run over. Like, do not.
There's a question on the chat from Bahadur Bahamani. Could you comment on the vision talk as well, apart from the technical talk? Could you comment on the vision talk as well, apart from the technical talk?
Yeah, I'm not, I guess, not the right person.
Yeah, so I think not all places have the same kind of setup. So in some places, you will be asked to give only one talk, right? And the one talk you give is exactly the way Marco described it, which is more of a high level story vision with, again, where you're going to go and all this kind of stuff. Some places will ask you for two different talks. One that is more vision like. So again, that will still be a little bit like Marco described, but even more high level. So you even have almost no technical in a way, and kind of it's very much about this is the problems that I'm going to solve. And one that is actually technical, where you will be asked specifically to discuss, one project that you've gone through, can be on the board sometimes, again, depending on the department you go for, or could be on the methodologies. So there, that would look a little bit more like, regular seminar if you want, but still, you still need to, convince your audience and, keep it up. So that would be a little bit of the separation. Again, different institutions are very different, and also different departments within each institutions are different. So Sarah, I think you had some of those experiences.
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit on the technical talk with Chop Talk. So the idea is that you're supposed to know all the details of the work that you have done, and there might be like any question related to that. So it's not, yeah, I mean, like you could expect like anything related to the work and the detail that you have done, and you should be able to write it down. So besides like evaluating you in terms of methodology that you have done, they are also evaluating you in terms of like explaining and teaching how well you can explain what you have done to some audience that now they are mostly like faculty's expert, but probably not within your field.
One,
So actually, I would like to ask you, like you talk about how to get chosen. So I would ask you how to choose. What kind of questions?
That's the next.
Okay. So I can wait.
Transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the transition. I'll see you afterwards for the check. So it was to talk about the being on the other side, so I think we covered a lot of things like what people are expecting in terms of, application and in terms of talk. I mentioned that earlier, but it's very important again that soft skills are important, right? I mean, talking and being enthusiastic and energetic that day, like if you're tired, just get a coffee, or like get some vitamins or whatever. But I just sometimes see people say, come on, just wake up, like that's the day you should be awake. Anyways, so yeah, it's amazing. So that's actually an important point, right? Just look good, so that people feel that they are energetic. Again, talk about potential connections when you meet on a one-to-one basis, so that you can understand, also the setup of the department. You will get some very typical questions. Not every place has those questions. It feels very much like HR type questions, like where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years from now? That's a very standard question. And it sounds a bit generic, but it's not a bad idea to think about that because, I mean, Marco mentioned some of that. I think also Sarah and Laure earlier is that it gives you some perspective as to where you want your research to be, right? So it doesn't need to be perfect. Things will evolve, as Marco mentioned. But that's actually important. Like 5 years, it gives me a sense, I will have a few proposals, so that it's good to actually have a plan. 10 years, that's basically where you want to be in terms of your field, right? I mean, where do you want to define yourself in that particular field? Yeah, so those were some of the, those are some of the standard questions. People typically ask about fit within the department, like collaborations within the department, within the school, across different schools and within the university. So those are very typical things. Service, sometimes people ask, what type of service will you want to do? And it depends on the university. Some places really shelter junior faculty so that they have very minimal service, but some places have more service, so it depends on the scale of the, so having a sense as to, I'll be interested in graduate committee or undergraduate committee, it's good to actually have a sense of that early on. Again, that's related to the talk, but thinking about the fact that people are again looking for a colleague, right? So it has to be a fit, and they have to also understand, broadly speaking, the research, and can they see connection? Does it help the department? Can they see potential connections with them? That's actually very important. Yeah, and I don't know what else I had. Let me just check my notes. I think those were the main points. Another typical questions you're gonna hear about is funding. So it tends to be very generic. So where will you get funded, and where will you be funding your research group on? And so, of course, you will respond NSF, so National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, NASA, if you work on modeling or remote sensing, NOAA as well. So those are very typical ones. Department of Defense could be another one. And I think in our field, so people that are working on AI, you could also think about some things that are a bit more like philanthropic, right? So that can be something a bit different from the other candidates. So think about some other potential. For instance, we have some funding M-squared lines from Schmidt, used to be called Schmidt Future, not Schmidt Science. So it's good to actually know that those exist, right? And to be actually part of those as well. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Yeah, and again, I think a very important piece of advice is that really we are looking for a colleague, right? And it's more than just a scientist. Great science is great, but we also want someone that's going to be collegial, helping the development of the department, and helping with all of the service. Because at the end of the day, we never talk about that, but we are always looking for a unicorn. And we want someone that does everything well, like research, teaching, service, mentoring, and of course that doesn't exist, right? But you need to appear as if you were that person, right? And that unicorn, right?
I don't know. Do you wanna continue on being hiring side?
Well, I think we had a question on the other side. How do we choose?
How do we choose? Be as applicant, right?
Yeah, your question
Think,
was about
yeah,
applicant.
yeah. I think that's really important question. So the way that I used to think about it is like where I want to be. Like, do I want to live in this city? Do I want to work in this university? And it's like a decision that you make for like 6-7 years of your life. I think one way to maybe approach that is to get more information. For example, you see a job announcement, they ask for some specific skill that you need to have. Do you have them? And then you can get information about them. What is the culture of the university? What is the specific thing that they're looking for? Would you love to be colleague with the people that are living there or like working there? And what are the responsibilities that you have? Like, for example, are you supposed to teach, I don't know, undergrad courses 4 times a year, or is it only 2 times a year? I think that's really important, like how much responsibility you have, and then what they offer. And for example, would they support you for the first 2-3 years, or are you supposed to like get grant right away? I think that's what I can think of.
I think just to follow up on Sarah's, I think, a lot of the choices are very personal. So I think, it's great to get offers and it's super exciting, kind of making sure you take a step back and decide what is it that you value, what's important to you for your research, how, you'll be supported, as Sarah mentioned, how your students, postdoc, will be supported. Again, it's kind of people you're going to work with, and you want them to be in a department where they'll grow, where they'll be able to actually do all the things they want to do. And of course, whether you want to be, in the city or somewhere else. So I think really always like it's super exciting when you get, offers, which I hope, all of you will get, then always take a little step back. Try to think this is not just the excitement and the money and the salary and so on, but really this is it. This is going to be the next X number of years. And that's where you start your academic career. And that has a big influence on many things. So always take that step back and think about what is it, you value and you want. So
And just one thing to add is you have an advisor. So ask, consult with him or her, because they have more experience and they might be able to help you, make the decision that is best for you. Because oftentimes you don't know what you don't know, and the advisor can help in that case.
Maybe just to add, like in terms of selection, so you select and how you're being selected, So on the other the other side, I think it's important to remember that once you're passed or you go to the interview stage, it will appear to be pretty random to you, right? So it's not always the people that will have the best CV that will be selected at the end. And it's a combination of multiple factors, right? So including fit in terms of research within the department, the direction of the department. So it's also not a bad idea to talk and ask the chair about the vision for the department when you meet with him or her. And of course, all of the service. So once you're in that small pool, okay, you made it. So you're a great candidate. And beyond that is a lot of things beyond the talk, which is really crucial. Like if you've done a great job on the talk, beyond that is basically it's outside of your control, I would say. And oftentimes it can be disappointing. It feels like a failure, but don't take it personal. A lot of that is actually not due to you. It's multiple fits, and yeah. There's just so much you can control. So don't be disappointed. Of course, easier said than done, but that don't, you can ask for feedback, but typically the feedback is not super useful past that stage.
So I just want to be mindful of time. We're at 4 o'clock. That hour went by very fast. So I think some parts of our topics got woven in between. But if the panelists want to, anything else you would like to say that you didn't quite get to?
Good luck.
Perseverance is important.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, as everyone mentioned, right, it is a tough market out there, so don't get disappointed, but also use, your peers and use the communities that you have around you kind of to help you and kind of guide you through the process as well. So, you're still part of a good community. So hopefully, we can help.
And that's a great point. Like, don't also, we haven't talked too much about that, but don't underestimate the value of recommendation letters. There's nothing worse than a very generic recommendation letter. A specific recommendation letter, even if it's coming from someone less well known, has a lot more value. So being specific, someone that really knows you well will talk about your quality. And at least for LEAP and M-Square Lines, there's a pretty big community. So we're here to help. Like when you need recommendation letters, we hope we can help you. That's really, really critical. And that's a benefit of being part of a community as opposed to having just a single advisor.
I have a question. If others don't have, let's see if others.
Well, I think
Sorry, actually, yeah, sorry. This is really more of a comment than a question, but hopefully it's not that type. And I just wanted to say, I think many of you know, but, I'm a faculty member in CUNY, which is like, a mostly teaching institution. So it would be closer to, a small liberal art college or, a teaching institution. And I think the process, this is amazing content. The process in those type of places is a bit different. So I just want to say, if any of you is interested also in thinking about applying to these places, I'm very happy to be a resource for you and, and give you maybe additional advice that can, can cover a slightly different area.
Hello. I just wanted to ask about, I feel like you all touched on funding at some point. I had a question that pertained through the writing process and the oral presentation. And this may not have an answer or a direct answer or an easy answer, but my question is, how do you present yourself as someone who's capable of getting funding, right? Because that's kind of the elephant in the room, I guess. And that's something that I think about all the time. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about this kind of thing. So thank you.
Well, I think that when you apply for assistant professor, say, if you don't have a lot of experience, the expectation is that you have an idea of what funding agencies are interested or might be interested in your research. Oftentimes, though, the research you do, you can, oftentimes some research is very well funded and the department knows Other research is less well funded, maybe some more theoretical, I don't know, turbulence research. Very hard to get funding nowadays. um, and so I think it's not as critical. It's not a critical element for you to sell yourself as a good entrepreneur. It's going to be important ultimately, because if you bring in funding, then you can sustain your research group. But for the job talk, I think it's not the most critical element. I think your research, the past research and your research plan for the future and your potential as a colleague count a lot more than the funding. I don't know if
Just sure that you have awareness, but that's it.
That's very comforting, honestly.
yeah, don't worry too much about that.
So I ask the last question. So I wonder, I can speak now. I wonder if, so some people would say it's like a process. Like it's better if you want to aim for a faculty position, you don't think that, okay, this is this year, by the fourth year, I want to make this transition and start in advance, like 1 year, 2 year before it, because you have to get like the position open up yearly, and then you have to get rejected a few times before you start to succeed. And I wonder what are your thoughts like on that?
I think that, yeah, it is a process. Like I wouldn't, a lot of things have to align for you to get the job, because maybe you're the best person for that topic, but that year there is no opening for that specific area. Next year, a lot of openings. And so even if you're not the best person, now you get a job. So I think persevering in this case, it's important. Like don't give up, apply, and with time, you also learn as you go through the interview process. You maybe do 1, 2, 3 interviews. Your whole package will improve a lot, because now every time you get tested, you have elements to refine, and you learn how to sell yourself better, and so it slowly becomes a very good overall package, and the probability now is much higher.
So definitely, I mean, we keep hearing perseverance, but sometimes also the star aligns. There might be a job and you might feel you're maybe a little too early, but who knows? You might be only 1 or 2 years in your postdoc, and again, it's the job that you want, and the qualification, it's a good fit. Then give it all you've got, right? Because if you don't apply, you don't get it as well. But of course, ego hurts if you don't. But so it's a little bit of the.
Okay, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you so much to the panelists for all of your insight and advice. And we'll have more professional development events coming up. If you have any suggestions or any feedback, there's a QR code on that back table. They'll take you to a forum where you can share your ideas. Thank you again.